Inside this box is my new favorite Fujifilm prime lens, and we're going to talk about it right now. Hi everyone, welcome to Pal to Tech. Every now and then, a camera lens comes along that is so great, I have not even taken this lens off the camera hardly at all. It may as well just be glued to the camera at this point. I am, of course, talking about the new Fujifilm 30mm macro lens. It was released with the X-T5 camera back this past November, and I have been using it non-stop ever since then. Officially, this lens is called the Fujinon XF 30mm f2.8R LMWR macro lens. The LM means linear motor, and man, is this lens quiet and fast when it's autofocusing. And the WR means it's weather resistant. Can you go and take this thing and drop it into the Amazon River? No, but you can be out in rain and, light weather conditions and not have to worry. Let's get the cost out of the way. This lens is $600. That is $200 more than the 35mm f2.0 prime, but it is $200 less than the 33mm f1.4. It comes with a 30mm focal length that's a 45mm full frame equivalent. The aperture ranges from f22 to f2.8. So yeah, it's not quite as fast as the other Fujifilm primes in that same focal range, but the lens contains 9 rounded diaphragm blades, which I think makes a huge difference in the background that you can get with this lens. It contains 11 elements in 9 groups, and it carries a filter size of 43mm. And this thing is really light. I mean, the entire lens weighs in at only 195 grams. The major selling point of this lens is the 1x maximum magnification with a reproduction ratio of 1:1. To put that another way, this is a prime lens that can focus at pretty much any distance. The minimum focus distance on this lens is crazy. You can get as close as 3.94 inches, right? 10 centimeters, and still use autofocus to nail the shot perfectly. You will have to take that lens hood off because that is inside the lens hood. You got to take the lens hood off, but you can get so close with this lens. So watch this. I'll put it in single autofocus. I will take my subject and watch how close I can get. Have a look at this. Closer, focus. Closer, autofocus. Closer, green light, and it's in focus. Oh, there it goes. I mean, I'm this close. I'm gonna move it back a millimeter. There. I'm not kidding. This lens goes right up to it. However, you can pull back your focus to infinity and use this thing as a really nice 30mm prime. The flexibility is awesome, and it's the main reason I have not taken this lens off my camera very much. Nevertheless, let's take a look at image quality. If you stop it down to f2.8, you do have some vignetting going on for sure. You see it right here, but it is gone at f4, and it stays gone all the way through to f22. I'm pretty far away from this wall right here, keep that in mind. So I'm gonna zoom up to 200%. This is f2.8, and it is a bit on the soft side directly in the center at f2.8. And I found the sweet spot for the center of this lens to be at around f5.6. However, the center does get a bit softer as you close down the lens, especially at f16 or look at f22. Overall, the colors that you get out of it are mostly on the contrasty side, but this lens really does hold its own at f2.8. And yeah, I would always prefer a lens to open up to f2, but I was really happy with the background that I was able to get with this lens at f2.8. The chromatic aberration did not bother me in the slightest, and I didn't notice much lens flaring. Even for portraits, have a look at the sharpness at f2.8 here. So here I am zoomed at 100%, and here we are at 200%. But listen, you don't buy this lens solely for shooting pictures of people or nature or anything else. You get it for the macro. And the macro on this lens is wonderful, especially when combined with the 40 megapixel sensor on the X-T5 camera. You know something? I think macro gets a bad rap these days, because you think of macro and immediately you have images of bugs, bees and flowers close up, that comes to mind. I don't think of this lens as a macro. I think of this lens as an awesome 30mm f2.8 walk-around prime lens you can decide to shoot really close up with. Basically, focus at any distance. And that's the absolutely amazing thing about this lens, the sheer versatility of going from normal shot to utilizing the macro features, all without having to change lenses on the camera. Of course, if you are going to be shooting macro with this lens, you are often going to need to focus stack your shots together so that you get images that look like this instead of this. Here's a quick way to do it on the X-T5. First, go into your menu into AF/MF and make sure that face eye detection is off and subject detection is off. Next, you need to put your shooting mode dial into bracket. Rotate your focus mode dial to M for manual. You are also going to want to lock your camera down on a tripod or some way to fix it in position so that it does not move between each of the shots that the camera is going to automatically be taking for you. Go into the little camera icon, into drive setting, into bracket setting, and where it says bracket select, choose focus bracket. Then scroll down. Focus bracket. You see that right there? Choose that. And there's two choices here, manual and auto. I have an entire video all about manual focus stacking on Fujifilm cameras. Go check that out. For right now, for the fastest, least amount of hassle, you put it in auto. You see that right there? And then you're asked to choose an interval, okay? This is really important. If you put it at either 0 or 1, you are gonna get bad focus stacking. It'll make me mad, bad, and sad. Don't do that. Instead, put it to about 5 at the minimum. I think 5 is good. Get an object that you want to, shoot real close up. Go ahead and hit the menu OK button. You want to set point A. I am just rotating the focus ring, that's all I'm doing. And I am focusing on the part of the subject that is closest to me. Once I've done that, I press the menu OK button. What I'm going to do now is rotate the focus ring to the furthest part of the subject that I want to have in focus. Once that part of your subject that's furthest away is in focus, do not press menu OK again. Instead, press DISP back. You're back here, you go ahead and press the shutter release button. And your camera will start shooting a series of images with 5 seconds between them. Don't move the camera during this process. Once you're all done, you may have well over 100 images on your SD card. What do you do then? Well, you can certainly bring them into Photoshop as well as other image editors and perform a focus stack merge. However, I like to use a program called Helicon Focus, which is dedicated specifically for this kind of thing. You import the JPEGs, and in about 10 seconds, you're done. Now, you could import the RAW files. The problem is the program will be converting them into DNG. It's just a big fat file mess. Shoot them in JPEG and then bring them into Helicon Focus that way. Because you're shooting in JPEG, make sure you get your lighting right. You have less latitude when you go to edit. Let's talk about autofocus now. Overall, the autofocus is great, and it's on par with other Fujifilm prime lenses in this focal range. It uses linear autofocus, which moves very fast and is very quiet. Of course, if you're shooting in AFC mode, you must adjust your AFC custom settings for stills or video shooting if you want to get great autofocus. So many photographers ignore this, and then they complain that the camera's autofocus isn't fast enough. It is, but you need to work these settings into your shooting situations. I've made videos on this in the past. Now, it seems to do better with autofocus moving forward than moving backward. This lens does not have OIS. You can see how much shake there is if you try and film on a camera like the X-T3 that doesn't have IBIS. However, with IBIS, in the case here the X-T5, it performs well enough. The only other issue that you may have with it is that it does not contain a focus limiting switch. What do I mean by that? Well, if you have a focus limiting switch on your lens, kind of like the Fujifilm 80mm macro does, you can restrict the range of distances that the camera focuses on. Why? Because that will help speed up autofocus and avoid focus mistakes. So if you are wanting to do that, you need to dive into the camera menu and do it from right here. And yes, I have a full video on that as well. Personally, for my shooting with this lens, I actually never did need the autofocus limiter. So let me summarize this lens right here and now. I have never used so consistently and enjoyed a lens as much as this one for Fujifilm's X mount. Yes, there are much sharper lenses across the focal range, such as the 33mm f1.4 or the 16mm prime, and there's even higher quality glass that you would get with the 16 to 55mm zoom lens, which is of course like having 4 prime lenses in one. However, this is $1,200. That is twice the cost of this one. The 30mm macro covers such a broad range, and it can certainly be recommended for general macro work, portraits, landscapes, etc. Now, if you're looking to get into exclusively high-end macro work, you might want to consider the 80mm macro. However, if you do not have a Fujifilm prime lens yet, or want the most versatile, fun, and great all-around prime lens that you can get with Fujifilm, seriously, I cannot recommend this one highly enough. As I've mentioned before, sharpness through the entire range is often one of the first points that someone will judge a lens on. And while this lens certainly is sharp enough, the number one reason I ask myself when purchasing a lens is, will I use this lens enough to justify the purchase? And more importantly, will I enjoy my photography more because of it? And the answer to both with this 30mm macro is a definite yes. I can say now, without any question, this is my absolute favorite lens for Fujifilm cameras. Well, that wraps up today's video, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you found it helpful, or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. I will see you again in a brand new video very soon. Take care.